rescue her, even if as far as you're concerned, she never needed rescuing. No, there's always romantic elements in my stories because I believe that it's very human. It's part of human nature for romance to be part of the story. So there. With that full disclosure, let us. Added detail. I'm not straight because there's some people who get bothered by that. So I'm bringing that up now. And if you're bothered by it, you're welcome to move to the other talk.
Yeah.
So the Game of Love will cover 4 topics. We have romance in games, falling in love in character, rolling with the naughty bits, and happy endings. So as you can see, it's from PG to much more mature. So feel free to step out if it reaches a point you're not comfortable with. This is full disclosure.
It's like Deadpool the movie. Hindi ka papasok eh.
Yeah, Deadpool the movie, lampas pang happy endings yun. May post-credits yun. So today, we'll start with romance in games. And I'd like to start with the very essence of romance is uncertainty. This is from Oscar Wilde. The fact that you're not sure if you'll end up together is what makes romance bloom. The moment everything's certain, excitement is gone. But of course, in real life, the moment everything's certain, that's when you're comfortable and things get more interesting to jazz it up in real life. So, no matter what type of game you're running, whether it's a simulationist, a dramatist, a narrativist, whether it's very system heavy, whether it's heroic or you're playing the villains, the game table should always be a safe place. This is the first largest rule in role-playing games because role-playing games are such an intimate experience. You're allowing yourself to pretend to be someone else. You're letting other people watch you play this role. You're open to criticism, you're open to being made fun of. So you're in a very vulnerable state. So adding romance even makes that even more so. So the game, first and foremost, should always be different from real life. And this, of course, is more important when it comes to, you have a scene where you argue with the player. Afterwards, that player might feel that you yelled at her. Di ba? So there's that understanding that it's separate. And if you're not sure if the person took it well, then bring it up. I'm sorry, that was just character, okay? Keep intimate things off screen unless the whole group discussed that, especially if the whole group discussed you're playing a different game. I mean, if you're there to play Dungeons and Dragons, don't assume instantly that you can play a bard that hits on everyone and makes lewd comments. Because the others might just be there to kill dragons. But at the same time, if... No, dungeons are passive. Assuming, for example, you're playing a game like Hot Guys Make Out, and yes, that's an official game. I'll tell you more about it later. Then, showing scenes of hitting on a character are expected. See? So, you have to be aware of what's expected at the table, and you have to realize that is an initial hint as to what level of intimacy you can show. Sexist humor is not welcome, at least for me, it's not. I don't like the feeling that there's someone in the table who's silently feeling terrible about what you're saying, but not saying anything. But again, that of course is for each and every individual table to manage at their own. And language matters. Sometimes something as simple as there are some cuss words and insults that have become so commonplace. In the Philippines, people go, bakla ka kasi. They don't realize it can be painful for certain people because it's demeaning. So there. So that's my gaming should always be a safe place. This is an interesting thing because it came up a few years ago in the gaming industry, which is the idea of having safe words. The idea is if something in game is brought up and it's something that you cannot accept, you mention a safe word and everyone just quietly moves away from it. So there's no need to stop the game, there's no need to explain why you're uncomfortable with it, there's no need to justify why it shouldn't be in the game. So you might want to try having that in your games. It could be something as simple as, okay guys, safe word for this game is potato. So the moment someone says potato, whatever the topic of that scene was.
And that's not the leader of the potato farm.
Well, that's where, normally people choose a word that's really far away. So, on running romantic scenes in your games, you of course want to let the player find the perfect match. I mean, it's always the perfect match, but the characters don't know it. So that's how the uncertainty remains there. You always want them to embrace the romantic cliches. And admittedly, romance works because of the cliches. Everyone says it's cheesy, everyone says it's boring, but the moment it happens, you'll have that reaction. And finally, there's the single word technique, which I'll get into. So for the first one of the techniques I normally do is I ask the players, tell me which is the celebrity that looks like this person. That way, we already get an investment of what looks good for that player. If the player says, okay, Scarlett Johansson, then everyone can imagine Scarlett Johansson in the role. It's easier to embody the scene. I've had some instances where someone would say a name no one knows. So instantly, everyone Googles. But the nice thing is, if you choose a celebrity lookalike to play the love interest, the emotional investment is easier because you're not anymore forced to try to imagine who this person looks like. Basic general features is always good. For those who are familiar with Fate, you can simply say, give me 3 descriptors. She's tall, she's feisty, she's not afraid to get dirty. We already have a visual of what that person would be like. It could also be the opposite way. Give me 3 things she's not. So you might say she's not mahinhin, she's not afraid of dogs, and she's not into video games. Okay. But that's your choice. Keywords, like the general features, is also useful, and keywords can explore more than just the physical appearance or the interesting features, but can also be elements that could be system-based. Like, you want her to be a paladin. You want him to be a bard because you like the idea that he'll woo you with songs or something like that. So you could have those little details in there. And lastly, which also works in real life, there must be some common grounds of interest. In as much as you can have the paladin fall in love with the necromancer, unless there's something they like doing together, it's going to be a very difficult struggle to keep moving in the game. It helps to ask the player early on, what do you guys share in common? What do your character, this character share in common? That way, you can inject scenes where they can interact with that. So let's say Necromancer loves the thrill of combat. Then maybe there will be a scene in battle where you make them bump into each other and they're protecting each other's backs. And then suddenly they're talking about dating while they're fighting. It's ways to inject those moments in. In terms of cliches, there's the Nicholas Sparks, as we call it. Nicholas Sparks, if you're not familiar with, is a terrible... Look, this is on camera. Is a very prolific writer who writes a lot of romantic stuff. Everything from The Notebook to The Promise to the... It's all does something, does something, does something, does something. But yeah, and it's always, it's always perfect guy, perfect girl meet, and for some reason they still won't be together. And then someone's dying, or someone's already dead, or someone died to save the other. But all that is a wealth of information to throw in your games, especially if they are not Nicholas Sparks people. So look into that. It's simple enough to use effectively. Triangles, of course, whether it's love triangle or whether it's a triangle of opposition. I love her, but she has her duty, and her duty wants to assassinate me. Or I fall in love with him, but he has been transmuted into this dragon, and this dragon now thinks I should be destroyed. So you can always create the triangle, and from there the love will be a story that you can develop further. Love-hate craziness works best if it's, one, the type of thing the player is into. And by love-hate craziness, we have movies like Punch Drunk Love, or TV series like Moonlighting, where the characters are always arguing, they're always at each other's throats. But deep down as viewers, you know they're falling for each other. It's a bit difficult if the player isn't, well actually it's not even a bit difficult, it's not recommended to be forced on players who don't like that sort of thing. Because it can be exhausting to play such a role. You're always angry at the person, you're always arguing. But for some, they'll love it, they'll enjoy it. And I've seen some groups where it's 2 players who'll do this. And what goes beyond we'll cover in the next chapter. The long courting is the last way you can have romance in your games, and that's basically you don't expect the results of the romantic interludes to have an ending anytime during the session. It might be something that never even gets fulfilled. There's that in Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, we have the two lead characters, spoiler alert, who actually feel for each other, and by the end of the movie, spoiler alert, you'll know what happens. But it's not like other movies wherein within the first few minutes of the film, they're just all hands and grabby already. So you can consider having a long courting happening in your game. Maybe it starts out they don't even care, and then maybe sometime after 4 or 5 game sessions, you're starting to notice what attractions they have. This sort of game, again, requires the players to discuss it with the GM, because the GM needs to know you're into having that sort of a storyline. And the player also has to, of course, clarify that he wants that sort of a storyline. It's not uncommon for some players to realize later on, okay, I don't like her anymore. And that's fine. You can make the story move in that direction. You can have the previous lover now jilted, or you can have the previous lover move on as if nothing happened, and the story can continue. On the single word poet technique, all you have to do is start every scene that involves the romantic characters with a single word to help guide what might happen. For example, you might open the scene and mention argument. And the two of you can now play off with that idea. Others can go for more poetic. You might start to say the scene and you might mention flowers.
MMK, Arenol.
And that's where the single poet technique comes from. The idea is it's a small title that flashes in the start. This actually is not limited to romance games, but it seems best suited for romance because there's that urge to find a way to make the word connect. I mean, imagine if it starts with 3DS, and then we start the scene. So, I'm trying to move as fast as I can because I want people to have time for the talk. Steal. We're not doing this to make money, unlike certain people. Because there are professional GMs, I don't know why, but there are. So feel free to steal. Steal from movies you like, steal from books, from television shows. You can use music, and there's also the option of having system help support the romantic interludes. I'm sorry, my nose is really itchy, I keep scratching it. Okay, so when you steal, obscurity is your friend. The moment you go Romeo and Juliet, all your players will go, it's a Romeo and Juliet. Sorry. So the more obscure you can find, the better. Be warned, however, most obscure sources out there are still based on classics or tropes. Which is why, as I said earlier, do not be afraid of cliches, do not be afraid of tropes. There's always getting the key line, but changing a few words. From Jerry Maguire, you had me at hello, but maybe, oh no, that's not Jerry Maguire. Okay. Anyway, I can't remember where it's from. But for a different game, you might change it. You might relate it to a different in-game scenario. You can consider song lyrics. Diba? You used to call me on my blank. There. And always, do not be afraid to combine and merge ideas. Yeah. Imagine if you combine elements of Romeo and Juliet with, let's say, Taming of the Shrew. So you now have a group of sisters that's trying to find the perfect guy, but at the same time, the perfect guy has sworn never to be with women. And then they'll all drink poison. But you have all the elements that you can use by combining stuff. Music. When you're using music to enhance a scene, always consider movie scores. Instrumental is best. The last thing you want is for people to actually sing along. Unless that's your intention, and that's where you choose songs that have the lyrics you precisely want. Classic stuff that happened in the past include, I had this scene where the guys were arguing, and the moment they left, I kicked in all by myself. There was this other scene where they had this romantic interlude, and while they're talking, I suddenly started playing softly but still audible enough. Would You Be My Number 2? Just to see how they work that into the scene.
These are old songs.
Yeah. Very.
What are these songs, Tobie?
They're the songs of your adulthood. Master. And there's the leitmotif technique. It basically means you have theme songs. Whenever this character comes in, you play her theme song. Or, you know how certain shows like Jane the Virgin, Ally McBeal used to do it as well. If it's the couple, there's a hint of their theme song in the background. Whether or not it's a romantic scene. Or even better, it might be playing, but the moment they start arguing, you cut the song. Just to show that, okay, the romance isn't there yet. But, so you can use music in that way. Systems can support romance. Maybe if the characters act cheesy, you throw them a bonus. Maybe if the characters are in a fight working together, suddenly they have additional armor class. The I can feel her twist is always a nice one. It works a lot in a lot of fictional and narrative stories. Basically, something happens to one, the other senses it, the other feels it. It might be something as simple as she's in trouble, or it might be something as far as I need to get to him now. I know there's something that I have to do, or he's definitely here. It could also be that character would be the only one who knows where the other would go. Because he knows how to think the way she does and the like. And finally, love can always mean there's rerolls. Since you're protecting the guy you love, then fine, you can roll again. Because love will fuel the attack. Or because the dragon breathed at you both get to roll again. Because your love is protecting you both for that moment.
Care Bears.
Or the end of the Matrix.
Diba? Oh, Matrix, a classic example. I love you. She's alive!
It was a love reroll.
And there's always a moment. What I basically mean is, no matter how crazy, no matter how intense, no matter how disastrous the scene is, there is always time for the two to have one last exchange. I mean, even Kingdom Hearts. Spoiler for those who haven't finished the first game. After everything you went through, they have all this time they're talking before they're separated again. Why didn't you just jump over at that time, right? But no, they were like, I'll find you, blah, blah, blah. So, there's always a moment to talk. And you want to make sure these moments are there because in as much as it might feel more tragic that they didn't get to say anything, there's less emotional investment in such moments. You want them to be able to say something, to make a promise they might not keep. So that's our first chapter. I'm really trying to breeze through this as much as we can. Our second one is more player-centric. The first one was closer to running a game with romance. The second one is now about if you're a player, how do you handle it or how do you approach the game if you want to have romantic elements. So I took this quote because it felt most appropriate. Stab the body and it heals, but injure the heart and the wound lasts a lifetime. Diba? He can relate with that statement a lot. If you don't know who he is, then that's fine. You're not watching the show. You can't see it? It's too small. Oh. Okay, never mind. There, you can't see it. Oh, it's too dark. Darn TV. It's a Game of Thrones guy.
Jorah.
So as mentioned before, and I'll just I will not have to recap this, but even as a player, you have to keep in mind the gaming table has to be a safe place. Romance, intimate scenes, it's always a question of vulnerability. You do not want someone to feel unhappy at the table. So on playing characters with a romantic angle, you have to keep in mind that you should never force the intimacy. You know, it's a game. If you're not happy playing a romantic scene, then just say you're not. If you don't want to have romantic elements in your game, then just say so. But at the same time, if you want to, but nahihiya ka to go full forward, that's fine also. There will be some tips on that. Sharing your internal monologue is one of the other techniques you can spin around the romantic angle as a player. And last is embracing the bad stuff. So, in terms of not forcing the intimacy, do not be afraid to get flustered. If you're having trouble saying the lines, that's fine. Diba? In real life, sometimes in romance, you're also getting flustered. You're also afraid to say things directly. Use it, utilize it, embrace it as a chance to make the scene feel more real. Internal monologue, don't go overboard that every time you act, you're explaining the internal reasons behind it. But at the same time, it allows others to understand why you're doing it. It could be something as simple as, okay, there's a combat, what do you do? And then you might declare, since I'm worried that she might get hurt, okay, I'll focus on protecting her. By just describing that, your players already understand that there's a romantic element involved. You could say it in character as well, but keep in mind, keep it short. Internal monologue means you're the only one who hears it in terms of the characters, so don't waste everyone else's time. If you're gonna give an internal monologue that's 3-4 paragraphs long, write the story na lang, don't play the game. Embracing the bad stuff is all about being aware that caring for someone means there's more trouble you'll have to deal with. Whether it's trouble in the sense of that person getting pulled into the fray, or your actions being misinterpreted, and you being forced to make choices you do not want to make because it affects the other person. You have to embrace that the bad stuff is part of what will make the story move forward. Many players avoid the idea of having romantic elements in the game because they feel it will just make the game harder for them. They don't realize that if the game doesn't throw you reasons to have trouble or to find it hard, then the game won't feel as fun. So don't be afraid that by having a significant other, that person will be kidnapped or attacked or the target. It could even work the other way around, where the significant other is the one who can help you because you're the one being targeted, but you're the one being targeted because it's a significant other one who's helping you. And show that it's worth all the struggle. It could be something as simple as in the end, maybe when you end the session, you announce that you finally have kids. So for some, that's victory. For others, it might not even have kids. It might be something as simple as they finally hold each other's hands and smile, and that's it. They're happy. Others who are being stalked by an obsessive ghost have a bigger problem. That's you, not our game.
Stop reminding me.
But yeah, you'll go through hell and then make it count in the end. Other game sessions or other game systems might promote tragedy instead of success. And that's fine too. Typically in our games, we embrace tragedy because we like the idea of things falling apart. It feels very cathartic to have that Vader no moment in the end. Out of character laughter is always the enemy of mood. Always keep that in mind. So the moment you have a fellow player who's trying to have this romantic interlude, or the moment you're going through a romantic interlude, it's best if no one makes fun of that moment. Again, you want it to be a safe place, you want everyone to have their spotlight, you want everyone to feel like they can play the role. So try to trim down that out of character laughter. If it's in character, fine, oh, finally you two are together, I told you were best. And then you start laughing about it, that's fine. But if it's, drama naman yan, you're discouraging the person from embracing the role. You're ruining the game for others. So try to keep in mind, if you want to joke about it, then maybe after the game session, you can talk about it. But during the game session, you want everyone to, have their moment. So if someone's having that moment, make sure they have it. Keep in mind as well that anything done in character is something others can work with. So if the romantic scene is too cheesy and you feel so much you want to side comment, then try to say it instead as a character. try to say it as your character commenting on the scene rather than as the player reacting to the scene. And that way, the others can still react and keep the game moving forward. Rather than suddenly talking about this movie and you're in a fantasy game. What's that, Romeo and Juliet? Then maybe someone can jump in. Yeah, I heard about that bard who wrote that story. It was a tragic one. And at least the game keeps moving. Of course, the ideal is the person, the relationship with that person is what matters. The advantages are not as important. Sadly, there are many gamers who will focus on the advantages more. So if I protect her, does that give me extra ganyan? That's pretty much a sign that he's not looking for a romantic storyline. So you can segue away from that. Remember Ripley. And this is just to remind, this is the point I segue, that when I say romance, I'm not even talking about, when I say love, I'm not talking about romance alone. Love can be platonic, can be different levels. Ripley, in the second Alien movie, is already ready to leave. Self-destruct sequence is already activated. Actually, the first movie, self-destruct sequence is activated. And in both instances, she stops to go all the way back to the heart of the trouble to try to save someone she loves. In the first movie, it's a cat. In the second movie, it's the girl. And players, who want to have romantic angles, who want to celebrate romance in their games, should consider doing something that stupid. Because other players, that's stupid. Why are you doing that? We're out now. We're safe. But characters in love are willing to do stupid things for the one that matters. So that's something you might want to consider embracing fully. The question, of course, is would you die for that other character? And the beauty is, if you actually decide you're willing to, and you tell the GM, oh, I'm willing to die for the... Most likely, the GM will make sure you don't. Because the GM will find that it's so much more fun to bring you to that very edge, and then at the last minute, see you survive. In fact, most likely, you'll die, and then the GM will explain, but it's actually not as bad as that. You still have 1 hit point. Or, you'll be long enough for the other one to get you, then she'll give you a healing potion. Because it's there, it's that moment, and you'll all want to celebrate. So don't be afraid of the bad stuff that comes, and be willing to die for it. As I mentioned, if you're not willing to do stupid things for the person you're supposed to be in love with, then there's probably something wrong. And if that's something in real life that applies, out na ako. I'm only here for gaming. I'm not here for real world love advice. So, rolling with the naughty bits is our third part. So earlier we're at the door. Second chapter, we're in the room. So now we're in front of the bed. Okay? Everyone still okay? We're continuing? So, the thing is, when we're talking about sex, it's hardly ever just about sex. And this is a quote from Shirley MacLaine. That's from Snow White. See? Oh, see, you all thinking naughty things? That's Snow White. So again, reminder, all my chapters open with this reminder. Simply because I was thinking there might be latecomers who show up, they didn't see the earlier slide. So yes, gaming should be a safe table. It's still all you, we move on. On the topic of sex in a role-playing game, and yes, that's a carrot getting chopped up there. Keep in mind that there are different ways that you can have sex in the game. And keep in mind there are different ways you can have the deed itself in the scene. Sex can be very romantic because maybe you approach it talking about how you've longed for this moment, how his touch makes you tremble. The romantic elements. It can be very biological. He needed a child, and the child was needed for the kingdom to flourish. They made love in the chamber. You can stick to the biological needs. It can be political. I shall sleep with you because our lands need peace. And blah, blah, blah. These are all frighteningly, historically accurate things that have happened. Wherein the act of consummation was political in nature or in order to settle a contract or to close a deal. The wrong ways to do it, however, and in as much as we try to say there is no wrong way to game, I will have to stress there are things that are considered wrong because it is rarely something everyone in the table would be okay with. But if you happen to be a group that's okay with it, then by all means have fun. Just don't play the pocket face. The wrong ways to do it is when the flirtation is targeting a player and not a character. Is when the flirtations or the sexual acts are harassing another player. Or it's when it's being intended to just make fun of a specific gender. Or if it's being done for pornographic reasons. I have seen groups, I'll get to it. I'll just finish that train of thought. I have seen groups that, terrible stories, but they used gaming to try to win over the other person. We'll talk about that in the next chapter. I have heard of groups that play and in their games, the women are always just there for sex or prize, or they're the prizes and that's it. They have no personalities, they have no... And as far as they're concerned, we're playing it accurately because it was that sort of a world in the medieval age. But this is, public event. We're here in SM. I don't think people want to hear you yelling, the wench is just for fucking. But there are groups like that, sadly. And for me, those are not acceptable. Again, I'm talking though in a larger scale of things. If it was you and your group in the confines of your room, then fine. That's your joy. I won't judge you for that. You were gonna say?
Well, our work is also closely related to that.
The other tenants?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's also for me. So
Oh, yeah.
it's a never do. Some interpret that. Some GMs or other players might. So it's an unsafe zone for at least for me in terms of the experience.
And so these are the warning signs. Again, if your group does want to explore, let's say the story of your group is they're living in a post-apocalyptic world and rape does happen and they're like, that's fine. Apocalypse world, one of the games I love, sex games. It's always a matter naman of, one, the hobby's been persecuted in the past. This hobby used to be the very tool of Satan. Now it's Madonna. But according to the newspapers. But the last thing we need is for us to be on the spotlight again because this time we're being seen as
Sick bastards.
So, how then do we approach the very act of consummation in the game without making others go ick? There's no way that no one will go ick, admittedly. But there is a way that everyone will still be okay with it despite having an ick matter. Acknowledge that it happened in the narrative. Diba? Some stories simply have it fade to black. Others simply go cut to the next day and she's all smiling. Oh my god, you did it! And it happened. There's no need to dwell on the details. You can mention it without the details, general thing. The Tobie glove. I bring her to the side and away from everyone, we finally confess our feelings and make love in the moonlight. It happened. There's no need to bedazzle it unless you wanted to. Fade to black, the tricky thing about fade to black that you have to consider though is when the fade happens. Because as anyone who does editing knows, where you cut a scene can affect how it looks. Diba? There's been a lot of flack on Game of Thrones in one of the rape sequences because it lingered too long before it finally cut away. Some say, diba, they should have cut sooner, but there were those who argued, so just because it happened off screen, it's okay. Diba? So the fade to black thing is something you have to consider how you use it and why. Because are you fading to black because it's not something anyone wants to see in the game? Then maybe you don't need to fade to black, we just mentioned it happened. Or are you fading to black because it has that dramatic moment where you pan to the room and you see all the coins and even the artifact he always watches over is now on the floor because he loves her so much. Then there's more meaning to it. Yes, that monster is what it looks like, and that's official art from Lamentations of the Flame Princess. there are games that actually do celebrate having mature topics such as sex and gender issues. Oh gosh, wait, I just realized I did not correct the typo in the letter tenets. Anyway, I leave it there.
mentioned it
I wasn't
last
able to, yeah, I was able to fix it. But there are games for those who want to actually explore games that have sex in the system. Okay, so these are some games that I've listed that you might want to check out. Bliss Stage is all about mecha powered by weaponized love. It's like Evangelion. The ick factor that I will warn you all about right now. You play kids. In Bliss Stage, something called the Bliss has called everyone 18 years and older to fall asleep and they cannot wake up. The aliens have taken over the world by making everyone happy. Sadly, this did not affect kids. And one adult. There's one single adult who's still awake, still alive, and he started a resistance movement. They were able to take over the aliens, one of the machines of the aliens, they reverse engineered it, and now, like Evangelion, a kid would slide in the machine, she'd enter this dream state, and then in the dream world, where the aliens are, she comes up with this large mecha armor, which is created with parts based on her relationships with other people. So for example, if you were that main character, your love for your father might be the main body. Your respect for your teacher, who's now trapped in the endless sleep, might be your weapon. You're so good at that. It's very symbolic. Part of the story elements that make this game fantastic is the fact you are all running on a timeline. Because once you hit 18, you're adult. You go to sleep. So there's that, we have to save the world, but at the same time, we can't grow up. And of course, since it's all about the relationships, and you're all playing teenagers, you suddenly have a crush, it's a new weapon. And then you have a breakup, suddenly you can't call the weapon. It's that sort of a game, see? So it sounds at first icky that you're playing kids and it's weaponized love, but then if you look at the deeper elements, it's a very interesting scenario. Hot guys making out. It's romanticized boy love. It's not for everyone, I will admit. But it's, yes, your young boy, most likely the master of the household, and you have the older guy, who's most likely the butler and the like, and there's romance. It's a Ben Lehman game also, if I remember. No, it's a different game. Lamentations of the Flame Princess is close enough to Dungeons and Dragons. BJ, how would you summarize Lamentations in a single phrase?
It's Dungeons and Dragons if D&D was less Tolkien and more Lovecraft.
So there's a lot of death, there's a lot of horror, and there are a lot of monsters that also push the boundaries. The game got into some trouble with its artwork. This is an example. And notice if you look at it, it does have phallic elements because it is actually that sort of a monster. But it's not exactly something you look at as pornographic because if you're aroused by that, my God, you have problems.
It's a tough monster.
It's Monster Hearts. It's one of my favorites. I highly recommend those who love shows like Buffy. So what's the show with the ghost, the werewolf, and the vampire?
Being Human.
Being Human.
Almost anything on CW, the supernatural.
That's true. Almost anything in CW can be played with Monster Hearts. Monster Hearts is all about teenage monsters struggling with intimacy issues. You can imagine it's a school. You're a ghost, you're a vampire, you're a witch, you're a zombie, and you're actually
From Fairy.
You're actually you're actually the one who falls in love with them, but you're completely human. Because there is a character class like that. You always get into trouble.
Yes.
And it's all about
There is a Xander.
finding elements for parang when will I be accepted? Why don't you love me? One of our favorites is the Queen Bee. The Queen Bee's power, which is not necessarily a power depending on how you choose to approach it in the game, is she always has her posse, her troop.
Her clique.
It's the mean girls, her clique. And then if she ever makes out with anyone, that person's suddenly part of the clique. So it's that mean girls element of, well, you're one of us now. We have Apocalypse World, which is basically sort of like Mad Max. It was written way before Mad Max. Well, It was written and inspired by the first Mad Max movie.
Yeah. Before Fury Road.
It's a post-apocalyptic world where your needs and desires are king. It introduced to the gaming industry something called the sex move. It's literally a
Monster Heart
small.
also has to.
Yeah, well, Monster Hearts followed the polish world.
Yeah.
It literally has a small box in the character sheet that says if you have sex with someone, you get this. And the main reason for that was the game was post-apocalyptic, wherein since we don't really have money, diba, I'll pay with my money. It was part of the system's idea. Not all are comfortable with it. And the easy tweak is if you're intimate with someone, it doesn't have to be sex. It could be you just hug the person because you care for him. Then it will still work. But it's written originally to portray that. So like you have someone who, if you sleep with that person now will have trouble fighting you because they feel this and that. Or there's this other one naman, if you sleep with the person, you'll have penalties fighting him, and he will have a bonus to using his power because he feels invigorated. It's an interesting system. Slay with Me, it's not that known here, but it actually was pretty big abroad. If I remember, it's by Ron Edwards. It's a two-player game between a person and a monster. So it's like Beauty and the Beast. The main twist though is we don't know if the monster is a monster or a lover. So we don't know if it will end as Beauty and the Beast or if it will end as a slasher film.
Oh my god.
That's up to the two players. Grey Ranks, it's war. You're all in the ditches and romance blooms. So yes, more often than not, this tends to be homosexual relationships because it's male soldiers. But there have been those who played it differently. And Houses of the Blooded, one of our favorite games. Houses of the Blooded was John Wick's anti-D&D game, as he calls it. Because you start off the game, you already have land, you have a castle, you have magic, and you can fight.
There's
And-
no magic.
Sorcery.
Sorcery is forbidden.
Well, yes, but you have it. And then, you're already immortal. You cannot die from disease, you cannot die from old age. You can only die from murder or poison or suicide. And if ever you finally get old enough, you become this godlike element that others worship. Then that's starting character level. So what do characters in House of the Blood do? They spend their days enjoying parties, celebrating romances, creating art, and getting vicious at each other. So we call it the telenovela RPG. Because there is actually a number, I think it's like 6 pages of system for handling a romance. Because like, for example, if my character was starting, if you don't mind, my character is starting a romance with you, there would be the initial scene, there's the initial action of seeing who is initiating the romance. So just because I start it doesn't mean I'm initiating it. So I might mention, for example, what brings a princess like you to this castle? And then let's say you respond, well, definitely not to meet a prince like you. So we're butting heads. We then roll. And let's say you win the roll. You now have the decision, do you initiate the romance or not? Now let's say you choose to. With initiating the romance, as players, we both know now you're in charge. But this becomes the struggle now of who is dominant. So you might go, let's say, drop your handkerchief. Intentionally. Oh, it dropped. And then me, I'm like, okay, if I pick it up, then that means you're dominant. Diba? So I might, good thing I have an extra. So now it's your turn to respond. Do you take it? Or so it's like that. And then finally, when that is settled, let's say we finalize you're dominant and I'm not. So I'm the one now who has to prove my love to you. And you're the one who's allowing me to do so. System-wise, anything I do for the remainder of the next few seasons that is trying to prove their love, I get bonus dice.
It's a quest.
So it's sort of the thing that in-game you'll want to have happen. And yes, there's nothing about only having one romance. The game though is also known for its brutal telenovela nature. Parang guy, our favorite our favorite count, who admits his love for the woman. And the woman says, I cannot be with you because my husband, I love my husband too. And then he goes, but if he was not here, then perhaps. Next party, he shows up with a gift. What's this? And he smiles, perhaps. Opens it and it's her husband's head.
Oh, goodness.
Now you are free. It's that sort of story. We love it so much. It's like addictive telenovela.
We played it for years on end, literally.
I know, we had generational stories where the group characters, they had children, and then their children are dealing with the sins of the parents. It's crazy. Because yes, even having kids has system. It's a crazy game. So what to avoid, on the other hand, there's a bit offensive and abusive agendas. Diba? We'll play this game to show how women are crap. Sadly, there are groups like that. Another example, oh, we'll play this game because in this game we're just killing off animals. I've seen groups like that. It's scary, but it's true. There are games, systems, that I highly recommend you avoid. I will only mention two, I will not mention others. There's Fatal and Breakthrough. Fatal is known to be, well, it proclaims itself to be a comprehensive simulationist fantasy game. And if you look at it in that perspective, it's a worthy feat. It's 900 pages of very...
Simulation.
It's 900 pages of very well, no not well, but very very thoroughly mapped out simulation rules. To the point that if I punch you in the stomach, there's a table to see what organs are affected. The guy believed in trying to shape it that well. But of course, the offside to it is it goes as far as the circumference of the ring around your nipple, the girth of your manhood, and stuff like that. And the reason why he has these details is because if you look at the system, he takes those things into account to determine the damage if you're raped. So it's just wrong. But for something that tried to be simulationist, I see why he tried to cover all the elements. It just comes off really wrong. Ray 2, on the other hand, is based on a bunch of novels, if I remember correctly, and they're so hard to talk about them without getting offensive sounding.
Let's just move on.
Yeah, let's just move on. Google to your own risk. Google it. Making sex silly and comical. This is not to say you can't have comedy games wherein sex enters hilarious moments. But this is to say you don't want to make the game a chance to make fun of someone's boobs. I mean, if you're going to play a female character and your theme point is to go, oh, I perk my nipples, then you're probably best not having such sexual elements in the game.
Actual game code.
Actual game code. That was more than 3 times in a single game session.
Yeah.
With the, I pull out a lollipop for my cleavage. Diba? It was funny, and thankfully it was in our home. But there was that feeling of, oh, buti na lang it's your gaming circle. Because if it had, let's say, different friends, that would have gone wrong.
Was this a guy?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
And his wife was finding it hilarious, but at the same time went, don't ever play that again. Blow by blow descriptions when they are not welcome. I don't think I need to expand on that. If you start saying, I open my zipper, the other players say, okay, time out, let's move to the next scene. Then don't force it na, move to the next scene. But wait, there's more. Saving through, always be aware that you might be harassing someone without realizing it because you're having so much fun. So be aware of that possibility. I'm not saying be paranoid, but I am saying
Be mindful.
if you don't think you can have your younger sister beside you in that scene, then maybe you should tone it down. Diba? Something like that. Or if you don't believe your mom can be listening to this again, then that's a good gauge that you should tone it to some extent. So with the last part, happy endings. And I'll make this quick.
That's what you should.
So there are two categories of love according to Taylor Swift.
I'm so sorry.
It seemed appropriate for this part. So are you interested in dating that other player in the at the table? I will tell you now, don't do it. Because you're there to game. Everyone showed up to play a game. If you're interested in the person, then fine. Consider talking to that person afterwards, outside the game arena. Maybe invite that person out. It's up to you, that's your life. But while at the table, you're there to game. Don't bring any baggage or other agendas while you're there. If you think the interest isn't clearly mutual, that's already a good hint not to get into it. Especially while you're in the game.
Awkward, you know.
And nothing ruins a game more than two people not comfortable with each other at the table.
Awkward. Yeah.
Yeah. So, cute siya. Pero hindi naman siya nagpaparamdam sa'yo. Huwag mo nang isipin. Just be happy na lang cute siya. That's fine. There's no harm in finding someone cute. Everyone finds someone cute to some extent. But if during the game, bigla na lang, oh, I'll save you. Okay, medyo weird na yan. That's crossing a line.
The NPC holds your hands.
Diba?
May physical pa. Halata.
Oh. Do not use the game to try to win the other over. Please. Please don't. And I have seen this happen a few times already. There was one convention in the States that I was lucky enough to run a game. And two people came up and they were arguing whenever it wasn't their scene. During the game, it's running. And then while I run your scene, and I started to overhear. And it was, so you're playing this game too? Yeah, I like this game. No, I think you're just following me. No, I really like this game. I play here all the time. And in my mind, it's my first time to run a game here. I play here all the time. So, stuff like that really happens. And admittedly, this is a lot more prevalent in the LARP circles in the States. Live action role-playing games, for those who are not familiar, it's like improvised theater. You're all in costume. You're all acting out the roles. Usually there's a no-touch rule, but some allow touch to some extent because they're more trusting of each other. But sadly, that has been abused by some circles.
I will also add in that it happens between players, but don't you fucking dare do it if you're the GM.
Oh, that's the worst.
Don't hit on your player during a game. That's...
And
Tatakwil ko kayo.
And-
Sabay ko kayo palabas ng player.
And I will attest as a GM whose partner games, you have to also be able to separate yourself from your partner during the game. Because you don't want naman to be always pag partner mo mas madali. Or worse, pag partner mo mas mahirap because you're overcompensating. Diba? So it's a tricky business.
I don't know.
And that's how I work it. You don't know. Okay? So remember, as I've shown 3 times in this talk, the gaming table is a safe area. It's a safe place. You want the gaming table to be a place where you can literally go, sige, for this game, I'll try playing... Can I play a pregnant woman? Because you want to explore the stories that will be there.
Who is a ninja?
Who used to be a ninja, but now is the Secretary of State.
Yeah.
Oh, diba?
Cool. That's actually a cool
So it's it's L5R Madam Secretary.
Must be Scorpion.
Diba? But yeah, so we want the gaming table to always be approachable. Given the years of gaming that I've had, which are definitely nothing compared to ones. Disclaimer lang.
That's a compliment.
Oo, disclaimer lang. Siguro mga 1/4 lang ang gaming history ko sa'yo.
Oh, Adrian's not out here.
No, Adrian, grabe na bakit lang tayo.
I started gaming with rock tools.
yung nahanap na D20 na made of stone sa'yo yun. Okay, but yeah,
Only decapitation can kill me.
in the many years of gaming, both here and abroad, with various circles. I've had a gaming group which was a mother, father, and son because they wanted their son to try gaming. I've had a gaming group where it's all women and I was the only guy. I had a gaming group where it's all guys and they were all playing women. I mean, with the various mixes that I've experienced, the things that stand true are the things that Gamers and GMs wants to uphold. And it's the things that we want to share with everyone. So here comes the typo. Ta-da!
Today favorite.
Foster mutual trust. We always want to make it clear that everyone in the game, everyone in the group can trust each other. Diba? You play the scene so much that you're in tears and you're so angry. We will all recall fondly that story, we will all share it, but we won't do it to insult you. We're doing it because we love that moment. Yeah. The fostering of trust is, it's this unwritten promise that we're not using the game for ulterior motives. We're not going to require you to play the games in order to be our friend.
We're not even here for the money.
Diba? It's all about celebrating the joy of creating the story and enjoying the game with each other. And even if you're a total stranger, if you love gaming or you want to try gaming, we're here to get that, to help you. And we'd like everyone who's been attending this to consider being, that open about it as well. Table fun is king, and this is absolute. No matter how we may feel, why is there a stack of pizza? I'm sorry, that food distracted me.
Go on.
There's a stack of pizza. I have to finish soon. Okay. Well, in as much as everyone has their own interests, diba? You want to play a game wherein you're all men and you're pillaging the villages because it's war and you're raping the women. That's your thing. That's your fun. Because that's your table. But if your table is in an open area, it's no longer just your table. Likewise, this also goes beyond just the type of games, but the type of systems. We don't believe in edition wars. We will have our opinions. I will always state that I'm not a D&D person, although I did start with D&D and I still have times that I'm willing to try running it again. But I have long said goodbye to D&D. Not because it's bad, it's just not for me. Diba? And Mon will never tell me, Tobie, dapat D&D nilalaro mo lagi.
No.
Likewise, I will never tell him, stupid for playing that path. Diba? It's irrelevant. Everyone has the right for their own fun.
There's no right or wrong way to play or run your game.
And I will add, as shady as this might sound, homebrewing is something I want everyone to get in. Because if people homebrew, people eventually write their own games. And if people eventually write their own games, this industry continues to grow. There was a time when role-playing games was nothing but D&D. And then it exploded. We had Star Frontiers, Top Secret, Marvel Superheroes. I mean, all these games appeared. And then they vanished for a while. Because the industry
Bubbles.
struggled. Diba? It had its opponents, it had its reason to hype. And then slowly we started to come back. And with the surge, thanks to the Forge, thanks to websites that kept the flame alive.
Board games also.
Yeah, but in terms of the community itself, there was that surge to start creating. Many people who used to just play started to make their own games. And now with the advent of board games as well, the idea of tabletop fun is so alive, so active. We need more games out there. And hell, I'd love to have more Filipino gamers creating stuff that is released out there. So celebrate the diversity of gaming styles and support the community, share the hobby. Diba? It's not naman as bad as spending thousands of pesos for a game. You might spend as much also, but it's like any other hobby. It's an investment of time and what you want to do. So that ends the talk. I sadly am booked for March.
I think there's a slot.
But those who want to schedule games, if you want to try any of the lesser known games, because I try to make myself available for those who want to try the lesser known gaming systems. I promised myself to yearly try 12 new game systems. I've done that so far for the last 2 years, and I haven't started this year. So just let me know if you want to try any of the new game systems, and we can try to schedule that in.
March 19 is open, Palm Sunday is open, Easter Sunday is open. I know those are our days.
So yun. So those are the contact numbers if you would like to reach me. I have a Patreon account as well, and there's the Facebook group. Please spend time to send your responses. GM?
Feedback.
This pass. And special thanks to my Patreon sponsors who are helping fund all my talks. For those who are interested, I have finally released online Bad Timing. So it's a fiasco playset. It's a rom-com game that I wrote, inspired by a script I wrote. But it's basically, it uses the fiasco system. It's pay what you want, ergo it's free. Feel free to download it in Drive to RPG. There will not be a convention next month, I'm afraid. March, we are taking a breather because April we have something big planned.
I don't know.
I don't know the full details.
It's a two-part.
Okay, what I know of April is that there will be 2 mini-cons because there's a plan to have a large campaign that will be played on both mini-cons that will have multiple GMs.
In the same world.
So like, on the first event, let's say you'll play, and let's say you're playing under BJ. On the second one, you might play under a different GM with the same character continuing the story. I'm not sure of the details because, as I mentioned, I'm committing myself to the lesser known games. I will be running instead a game called Ryutama. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with it. But it's a Japanese RPG game where if you don't sleep right the previous night, you'll wake up with half hit points. And if you end up picking up something that makes you smelly, you will feel bad for the game because it has an effect. It's very cheeky. There are 4 dragons called the Ryujin, and they basically devour stories of adventurers that they are given. Each dragon, and that's red, green, black, and blue, favor certain types of stories. That dragon, however, also favors the events that you go through. Excuse me. So let's say if your group ended up getting the notice of the black dragon, all of a sudden your stories are about sacrifice, about pain, about betrayal. But if let's say the green dragon noticed you, then your stories might be about friendship, about heartwarming moments. So it's an interesting storyline.
Hate the Black Dragon.
It plays like a Japanese RPG. So in combat, there's close range, and then there's far range. And then it's basically you stay in the front line or you move to the back. There's the different classes, of course, the healers, the noblemen,
Farmer, the trader.
but character classes include traders, farmers,
Merchant.
yeah, the farmer can have multiple animal pets, which is cute. And part of the game is knowing how much water you carry because the journey is part of the adventure. Yan yung mga ano eh, it's a desert, I have the perfect shoes.
+1 for desert.
It's an interesting game, and I plan to run that for April. I don't know if I'll be able to run it for both Aprils though. And in a few minutes, I shall be running a homebrewed game called No One Lasts Forever. It's about supermodels that are super spies. It's inspired by Zoolander, No One Lives Forever, Totally Spies. Yeah. So that's going to be running in a few minutes. Okay, so you have your reaction sheets. If there are any questions, but I doubt it, let's just go now. The food's free. But if you have any questions, feel free to approach me. There's no need to be formal about it. Okay, thank you very much.